I never told my son about my $40,000 salary. His wife declared, "Why do we need a poor old woman? Get out." I left without a word. A week later, I took their house. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had worked for 43 years as an accountant at a mid-sized firm in Ohio. 43 years of early mornings, balanced ledgers, and quiet satisfaction in a job well done. My husband, Robert, passed away when our son Michael was only 12. I raised that boy alone, working double shifts when necessary, wearing the same 3 dresses in rotation so he could have new sneakers for basketball season. Michael never knew about the money. Not the real amount, anyway. He saw me clip coupons, drive a 15-year-old Honda Civic, buy generic brands at the supermarket. He saw a mother who made do, who stretched every dollar. What he didn't see were the investment accounts, the modest but steady portfolio I'd built over decades of careful saving. Robert had been good with money, and he'd taught me well before cancer took him. By the time I retired at 67, I had just over $800,000 saved. Not a fortune by some standards, but enough to live comfortably and help my son when he needed it. And he had needed it. 3 years ago, Michael called me, his voice tight with stress. His wife, Jennifer, was pregnant with their second child. They'd been renting a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, and with a baby on the way, they were desperate for more space. But Michael's job as an insurance adjuster didn't pay enough for a down payment on anything decent, and Jennifer's income as a part-time dental hygienist barely covered their existing expenses. "Mom, I don't know what to do," he'd said. "We've been looking for months. Everything is either too expensive or in a terrible neighborhood." I'd found them a house, a lovely 3-bedroom colonial in a good school district, listed at $320,000. Without telling Michael the full extent of my finances, I'd arranged everything through my lawyer. The house was purchased under an LLC I controlled. Michael and Jennifer would live there, paying what they believed was rent to a private landlord. Actually, payments that went into a trust fund for their children. They thought they'd gotten lucky with a generous landlord who accepted their limited income. They never questioned it. Why would they? But over the past year, something had shifted. Jennifer had always been particular. She cared about appearances, about brands, about keeping up with her friends. I'd noticed her comments growing sharper, her smiles more strained when I visited. Little remarks about my old-fashioned clothes, my outdated opinions. Michael would laugh nervously, change the subject. Last month, their daughter Emma's birthday party. I'd arrived with a homemade cake, Emma's favorite, chocolate with vanilla frosting. Jennifer took one look and said, "Oh, you didn't have to bother. We ordered one from that French bakery downtown." My cake sat untouched in the kitchen while everyone ate the expensive alternative. Then came last Tuesday. I'd driven over to drop off some children's books I'd found at a yard sale. Beautiful hardcovers, barely used. I let myself in with the key they'd given me years ago. Jennifer was in the kitchen with her sister, Candace, both drinking wine in the middle of the afternoon. "I'm telling you, she just shows up whenever she wants," Jennifer was saying, acting like she owns the place. I froze in the hallway, the books heavy in my arms. "So tell Michael to deal with it," Candace replied. "Michael won't. He feels guilty because she's alone. But honestly, I'm tired of pretending. She dresses like she shops at Goodwill. She brings us weird secondhand things. She's just embarrassing." I set the books down silently on the hall table and left without a word. My hands shook as I drove home. But I returned the next Sunday for dinner, as planned. Michael had insisted, and I wanted to see my grandchildren. The meal was tense. Jennifer barely spoke to me. When I offered to help with dishes, she said, "We've got it handled." Then came the moment that changed everything. Michael's younger daughter, Sophie, spilled juice on the carpet. Jennifer exploded, yelling about how the house was expensive to maintain, how they couldn't afford to replace things. I gently suggested a cleaning solution I'd used for years. Jennifer turned on me, her face flushed. "You know what? I'm sick of this. Your cheap little tricks and your thrift store wisdom. We don't need it." "Jennifer," Michael said weakly, but she was on a roll. "Honestly, why are you even here? What do you contribute? You live on some tiny pension in that sad little apartment." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a cruel whisper. "Why do we need some poor old woman hanging around, making us look bad? Get out." The room went silent. Michael stared at his plate. My grandchildren's eyes were wide with confusion and fear. "Jennifer," I started. "I said get out," she screamed. "Take your pathetic life and go." I looked at my son, my boy. He wouldn't meet my eyes. So I left. I walked out of that house, my house, without saying a word. The drive home passed in a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached. 20 minutes from their house to my apartment, and I don't remember a single turn I made. Muscle memory guided me while my mind replayed Jennifer's words on an endless loop. Poor old woman. Pathetic life. And Michael, God, Michael, sitting there in silence, letting her speak to his mother that way. I parked in my usual spot behind the modest apartment complex I'd lived in for 8 years. People often asked why I didn't move somewhere nicer after retirement. "This suits me just fine," I'd always said with a smile. The truth was more complicated. Yes, this place suited me. But it also served a purpose. It kept people from asking questions about money I didn't want to explain. Inside my small one-bedroom apartment, I stood in the dim kitchen for a long moment, still wearing my coat. Then suddenly, my legs gave out. I sank into a chair at the little formica table and let the tears come. Great, gasping sobs that shook my whole body. When had I last cried like this? At Robert's funeral, probably. That same sensation of the ground disappearing beneath my feet. How had I raised such a coward? Such a weak, spineless man who would let his wife humiliate his own mother? I'd sacrificed everything for Michael. Everything. And for what? So he could sit in silence while I was thrown out like garbage? The crying jag lasted maybe 10 minutes. Then something inside me went cold and still. I stood up, took off my coat, and made myself a cup of tea with hands that no longer trembled. As I waited for the water to boil, I caught my reflection in the window above the sink. A 70-year-old woman with gray hair, wearing a sensible cardigan from JCPenney. Poor old woman, Jennifer had called me. She had no idea. I carried my tea to the small desk in the corner of my living room and opened my laptop. My fingers moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent 4 decades managing numbers. I logged into my investment accounts first. $843,217. Even after purchasing their house, after 3 years of covering what they didn't know were phantom expenses, I still had over $500,000 in liquid assets. Then I opened the folder labeled Property Documents. The house at 847 Maple Street, purchased 3 years ago for $320,000 through Riverside Holdings, LLC. I was the sole member of that LLC. The deed was in the company's name. Michael and Jennifer had signed a lease agreement. They'd thought it was a standard rental contract, had barely glanced at the fine print. But it was a lease-to-own arrangement with very specific terms. Terms that I, as the property owner, could enforce. Or terminate. My mind began to work through the possibilities with the same methodical precision I'd applied to balance sheets for all those time. What were my options? What did I actually want to accomplish here? Did I want revenge? The word felt ugly, but I turned it over in my mind anyway. No, not revenge exactly. Justice, perhaps. Accountability. A lesson in consequences. I spent hours that night reading through documents, making notes. The lease agreement had a clause about maintaining respectful relations with the property owner. Another clause about the right to terminate with 30 days' notice under certain conditions. But this wasn't just about the house, was it? This was about respect. About teaching my son that actions and inactions have consequences. Around midnight, I closed my laptop and sat in the darkness of my living room. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not since I'd faced down the hospital billing department that tried to overcharge us during Robert's final illness, armed with nothing but my reading glasses and a highlighter. Power. Quiet, cold power. But I had to be careful. I couldn't simply evict them. That would make me the villain in their eyes, and probably in the eyes of everyone they told. No, this had to be done properly, legally. They needed to understand not just that they'd hurt me, but that they'd taken for granted something precious they never deserved in the first place. I needed proof of Jennifer's behavior. I needed documentation. I needed to protect myself legally while simultaneously making it clear that I was not, had never been, and would never be anyone's poor old woman. The first step came to me as I finally climbed into bed at 1 a.m. Tomorrow, I would call my lawyer, Thomas Brennan. Thomas had handled Robert's estate and the purchase of Michael's house. He knew everything, and he would know exactly how to proceed. For the first time since that horrible dinner, I smiled in the darkness. They had no idea what was coming. Thomas Brennan's office was in a quiet brick building downtown, the kind of place that spoke of old money and established trust. I'd called him first thing Monday morning, and he'd cleared his afternoon schedule for me. We'd known each other for 20 years. He'd been Robert's college roommate before becoming a lawyer. "Margaret," he said, standing as his secretary showed me in. His eyes were kind but sharp, taking in my expression. "You sounded troubled on the phone." I sat down and told him everything. The overheard conversation, the birthday party incident, Jennifer's explosion, Michael's silence. Thomas listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "What outcome do you want here, Margaret?" "I want them to understand what they've done," I said. "I want consequences that fit the offense, and I want it done legally, cleanly, so there's no question about who was in the wrong." Thomas pulled out the property file. He reviewed the lease agreement, made several notes, then looked up at me. "You have every legal right to terminate this lease," he said. "The clause about maintaining appropriate relations with the property owner gives you grounds. But if I may be frank, Margaret, this is your son, your grandchildren. Are you certain?" "I'm certain that my son needs to learn that standing by while his mother is abused is unacceptable," I replied. "I'm certain that Jennifer needs to learn that she's been living in a house she never could have afforded on her own. I'm certain that I deserve basic respect and dignity." Thomas nodded slowly. "Then here's what I propose. We'll send a formal notice from my office to Michael and Jennifer. It will inform them that Riverside Holdings, LLC, we won't mention your name initially, has decided to sell the property. As current tenants, they'll be given first right of refusal to purchase at market value, which is now approximately $410,000. They have 30 days to secure financing or vacate." "They can't afford that," I said quietly. "Michael's credit is mediocre at best, and they have minimal savings." "Exactly," Thomas said, "which means they'll need to either find that money or move out. The legal process is airtight. And Margaret, if they come to you for help—" "They won't know I'm involved," I interrupted. "Not yet. Not until you want them to know." I signed the necessary papers. Thomas said he'd send the notice by certified mail the next day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Michael's face when he opened that letter. Would he feel fear? Panic? Would he finally realize what he'd lost? Part of me wanted to call him, to warn him, to make it all go away. But I remembered sitting in that dining room, watching him stare at his plate while his wife called me pathetic. The certified letter was delivered on Wednesday. I knew because Thomas called to confirm receipt. Then I waited. Michael called me Thursday evening. My phone rang, and his name appeared on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again an hour later. Another voicemail. By Friday morning, there were 6 missed calls. Finally, Friday afternoon, I answered. "Mom." His voice was ragged. "Mom, thank God. Something terrible is happening." "What's wrong, Michael?" I kept my tone neutral. "It's the house. The landlord is selling it. They're giving us 30 days to buy it or get out. Mom, we can't. We don't have that kind of money. We don't have any money. And with Jennifer not working full-time and my salary—" His voice cracked. "I don't know what to do. We might lose everything." "Have you talked to the landlord?" I asked. "Explained your situation?" "We don't even know who the landlord is. It's some LLC, and everything goes through lawyers. Mom, I'm scared. The kids' school is here. Our whole life is here. Where are we supposed to go?" I let the silence stretch for a moment. "That does sound difficult, Michael. Could you—" He hesitated. "Could you maybe help us? I know you don't have much, but if you had anything saved, even a small amount for a deposit on a new rental." "Michael," I said softly, "I'm just a poor old woman living on a tiny pension. Remember? What could I possibly contribute?" The silence on his end was absolute. "Mom?" "I have to go, Michael. Good luck with your situation." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from grief or shock. It was from the satisfaction of watching the first domino fall. They still didn't understand, but they would. Saturday morning, I received a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a screenshot of a social media post from Jennifer's private Facebook account, posted just after our last dinner together. There was a photo of me from that evening, taken without my knowledge, my face tired and drawn. The caption read, "When your Emil shows up in clothes from 1985 and wonders why we don't invite her over more. Bless her heart. Time to move on. Family drama." Below it, dozens of laughing emoji reactions. Comments from her friends. "OMG, you're so patient. Time for the nursing home? Cut her off, girl." The unknown number sent a follow-up text. "Thought you should see this. I'm Jennifer's cousin, and I never liked how she talked about you. She's been posting stuff like this for months. I screenshotted everything before she made her account private this morning. Let me know if you need more." I stared at my phone, reading and rereading Jennifer's words. The casual cruelty, the public humiliation, and I had the proof now. The point of no return had arrived, and I had just stepped over it. Monday morning, I sat in Thomas's office again, my phone in hand with Jennifer's cousin's screenshots saved and printed. Thomas reviewed each one carefully, his expression growing darker. "This constitutes harassment and defamation," he said quietly. "Margaret, this gives us even stronger grounds. Not just for terminating the lease, but for potential legal action if they try to contest anything. I want to move forward," I told him, full speed ahead. "Then here's what happens next. I'll send a second notice, this time directly informing them that the property owner is aware of their social media posts mocking and defaming her, and that this constitutes a breach of the lease's respectful relations clause. We'll give them 14 days to vacate instead of 30. Will that hold up legally?" "Absolutely, especially with this documentation." He tapped the printouts. "Margaret, they don't have a leg to stand on." The second notice went out Tuesday by courier. Thomas said it would arrive by end of business day. It arrived at 4:47 p.m. I know because Jennifer called me at 4:53 p.m. I didn't answer. She called 6 more times. Then Michael called. 8 times in a row. I let them all go to voicemail, my heart pounding as I listened to each increasingly frantic message. Michael's final voicemail that night was different. His voice was hard, angry. "Mom, I know you can see these calls. I know you're doing this. Jennifer figured it out. That LLC, the lawyer's office. She remembered you mentioning that lawyer's name years ago. This is you, isn't it? You're the landlord. You're trying to kick your own son and grandchildren out on the street because of one fight? Because Jennifer said some things when she was stressed? What kind of mother does this? One fight? Some things when she was stressed." I wanted to scream. Wednesday afternoon, they showed up at my apartment. I watched through the peephole as Michael pounded on my door, Jennifer standing behind him with her arms crossed. "Mom, open up. We need to talk about this." "Margaret, please." That was Jennifer, her voice sugary sweet. "Let's be reasonable. We can work this out." I stood perfectly still on the other side of the door, barely breathing. After 10 minutes, they left. I heard Jennifer's voice echoing in the stairwell. "Unbelievable. She's really going to do this. We need to fight back." Fight back. The words sent a chill down my spine. Thursday morning, I received an email from an attorney I didn't recognize. Michael and Jennifer had hired a lawyer. The email was full of legal threats, claims that I had entered into an oral agreement to eventually transfer the property to them, that I had promised the house would be theirs, that evicting them would be elder abuse in reverse, that they would sue for emotional distress, that they would fight this in court for years. I forwarded it to Thomas. He called me within an hour. "It's bluster," he said. "They have no case. But Margaret, they're going to make this ugly. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," I said, but my voice shook. That night, Michael and Jennifer showed up at my apartment again. This time they brought the children. I could hear Sophie crying in the hallway. "Grandma, Grandma, please." "See what you're doing?" Jennifer shouted through the door. "You're traumatizing your own grandchildren. Is this who you want to be? A bitter old woman who ruins her family over nothing?" I sat on my couch, tears streaming down my face, hands pressed over my ears. Using the children as weapons. There was no low they wouldn't sink to, but I didn't open the door. They finally left after 20 minutes. I heard Michael yell one last thing. "Fine. If this is how you want it, you'll never see them again. You're dead to us." Friday, Thomas filed a restraining order petition based on the harassment at my home. A judge granted a temporary order. Michael and Jennifer had to stay at least 500 feet away from me and cease all contact except through attorneys. When the sheriff served them the restraining order papers, Michael called Thomas's office screaming. Thomas recorded the call. Michael threatened to destroy me, to tell everyone what a psycho his mother was, to make sure I died alone with no one at my funeral. Thomas sent me the recording. I listened to my son's voice, twisted with rage, threatening me. And something inside me finally hardened completely. I took a week off. No calls, no emails, no thinking about the situation. I drove to a cabin I'd rented in the mountains 3 hours away. I sat by a fire, read mystery novels, took long walks in the cold December air. I needed to clear my head, to remember who I was beyond this conflict. By the time I returned to my apartment the following Monday, I felt centered again, calm, ready. They had tried to intimidate me, to manipulate me, to use my grandchildren as shields. They had failed. Now came the next phase. The envelope was sitting on my doormat when I returned from the mountains. Cream-colored, expensive paper. My name written in elegant script. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter from Jennifer. "Dear Margaret, I've had time to reflect on everything that's happened, and I want to apologize from the bottom of my heart. I was completely out of line that night. The stress of managing a household, raising 2 children, and trying to keep up with everything. It all came crashing down, and I took it out on you. That was wrong. You've been nothing but generous and kind to our family, and I treated you with cruelty you didn't deserve. Michael and I have been talking, really talking, for the first time in months. We've realized how much we've taken you for granted, how much we need you in our lives. The girls ask about you every day. Emma made you a card. I've enclosed it. I'm begging you, Margaret. Please give us another chance. Come over for dinner this Sunday. Let's start fresh. Let's be a family again. Whatever we did to make you want to sell the house, we'll fix it. We'll do whatever it takes. Please don't let one terrible moment destroy everything we've built together. With love and deep regret, Jennifer paperclipped to the letter was a crayon drawing from Emma. Stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. I miss you, Grandma, written in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. I read the letter 3 times. It was good. Very good. Jennifer had always been skilled with words, skilled at presenting the version of herself that she wanted people to see. The perfect apology, hitting every note: acknowledgement, humility, love, hope. I set it aside and made myself coffee. An hour later, another envelope appeared, this time slipped under my door. I heard footsteps hurrying away down the hall. This envelope contained a check for $5,000 made out to me, with a note in Michael's handwriting. Mom, this is everything we have in savings. I want you to know we're serious about making this right. Please cash this. Please forgive us. I love you. I'm sorry I failed you. Michael. I held the check up to the light. It was real. They'd emptied their savings account for this gesture. I tore it into small pieces and threw them away. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. Mrs. Peterson? A woman's voice, professional. This is Sandra Coleman. I'm Jennifer's mother. I hope you don't mind that Jennifer gave me your number. I wanted to reach out personally. Mrs. Coleman. I kept my voice neutral. Please, call me Sandra. Listen, I know my daughter can be difficult sometimes. She gets that from her father, God rest his soul. But she's devastated by what's happened. And those babies, Margaret, those sweet girls, they don't understand why Grandma won't visit anymore. I see. Jennifer told me about the house situation. I have to say, I was shocked. Shocked that you'd do something so extreme over a family argument. Jennifer said some things she shouldn't have, yes, but don't we all say things we regret when we're overwhelmed? Is it really worth tearing this family apart? There it was. The guilt trip, delivered in a grandmother's concerned tone. Sandra, I said calmly, did Jennifer tell you what exactly she said to me? A pause. She said there was a disagreement about housekeeping or something. She told me I was a poor, pathetic old woman and ordered me to get out of the house, while my son sat there silently. Longer pause. Well, I'm sure emotions were running high on both sides. I wasn't emotional at all, I said. I was serving dinner to my grandchildren. But thank you for calling, Sandra. I need to go now. I hung up before she could respond. They were trying every angle. The heartfelt apology, the financial sacrifice, the guilt about the children, now the extended family intervention. Each approach carefully calculated to find my weak spot, to make me back down. But I wasn't backing down. That afternoon, I met my friend Dorothy for lunch at our usual cafe. Dorothy and I had worked together for 15 years before she retired. She knew me better than almost anyone. You look different, she said, studying me over her menu. Stronger somehow. I told her everything, the whole story, from the overheard conversation to the latest attempts at manipulation. When I finished, Dorothy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Good for you, she said fiercely. They needed to learn this lesson. And Margaret? You're not alone in this. You've got people in your corner. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being too harsh, I admitted. You're being exactly harsh enough, Dorothy replied. You know what your problem has always been? You're so busy taking care of everyone else that you forget to protect yourself. Not this time. This time, you stand your ground. Her words steadied something inside me. That evening, I received an email from Jennifer's cousin, the one who'd sent me the screenshots. Her name was Rachel, and she wanted to meet for coffee. We met the next morning at a Starbucks across town. Rachel was younger than Jennifer, maybe 35, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I need you to know something, she said. Jennifer has been talking badly about you for years. Years. At every family gathering, every holiday. She'd make jokes about your clothes, your apartment, your advice. She'd roll her eyes when you'd send the girls gifts. She called you Michael's burden. And he never defended you. Not once. The words hurt, but they also clarified everything. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you deserve to know the truth, and because I'm tired of watching people get away with treating others like garbage. Rachel pulled out her phone. I have more screenshots, more messages, months of them. If you need them, they're yours. I took her number. We talked for another hour. When I left that cafe, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Certainty. I wasn't the villain in this story. I had never been the villain, and I was going to see this through to the end. The restraining order expired after 2 weeks, and they must have been counting the days. Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., there was a knock at my door. Polite this time. Controlled. Through the peephole, I saw Michael and Jennifer standing in the hallway, both dressed nicely, Michael in a button-down shirt, Jennifer in a modest dress I'd never seen her wear before. Their expressions were carefully arranged into masks of contrition. I took a deep breath and opened the door, but left the chain lock engaged. Mom? Michael's voice was soft, wounded. Thank you for opening the door. We were worried you wouldn't. What do you want, Michael? Just to talk. 5 minutes. Please. We brought coffee. He held up a cardboard carrier with 3 cups. Your favorite. Caramel latte with extra foam. The detail was intentional. Look how well we know you. Look how much we care. I considered closing the door, but something made me want to hear this. I needed to see how far they'd go. I unhooked the chain and stepped back. They entered my small apartment, and I saw Jennifer's eyes flick around the space, taking in my second-hand furniture, my small TV, my library books stacked on the coffee table. I saw the judgment flash across her face before she caught herself. We sat, them on my worn sofa, me in the armchair across from them. Michael handed me a coffee. I didn't drink it. Mom, Michael began, we've done a lot of thinking, a lot of soul-searching. What happened that night was unacceptable. I should have spoken up. I should have defended you. I failed as a son, and I'm deeply sorry. He sounded sincere. He'd always been a good liar when he needed to be. He'd inherited that from his father's side. Jennifer leaned forward, her hands clasped. Margaret, I was horrible to you. There's no excuse for what I said. I've been going to therapy. She pulled out her phone and showed me what looked like a therapist's appointment confirmation. To work on my anger issues. I want to be better. For Michael. For the girls. For you. I see, I said. We want to make this right, Michael continued. We talked to our lawyer, and we understand now about the house. We understand it was never really ours. We were living in your property, and we took advantage of your generosity. Yes, you did. So here's what we're proposing. Jennifer's voice became businesslike. We can't afford to buy the house at market value, but we can pay you back over time. We've worked out a plan. If you give us 5 years, we can pay you back every penny of what the house is worth, plus interest. You'd still own it, but we'd be buying it from you gradually. Everyone wins." I looked at Michael. His eyes were pleading. "And if I say no?" I asked quietly. The mask slipped, just for a second. Jennifer's jaw tightened. Michael's expression hardened. "Mom, don't be unreasonable," Michael said. "We're trying to work with you here." "I'm being unreasonable. You know what I mean. We're offering you a fair deal. We're apologizing. We're doing everything right. What more do you want?" "What I want," I said slowly, "is for you to understand what you did wrong. Really understand it." "We do understand." Jennifer's voice rose slightly. "You're upset about one bad night." "One bad night?" I interrupted. "Jennifer, you've been mocking me on social media for months. You posted a photo of me without my permission, called me an embarrassment, laughed about me with your friends. That wasn't one bad night. That was deliberate, sustained cruelty." Jennifer's face flushed. "Who told you about that?" "Rachel? That little bitch always had it out for me. Watch your language in my home." "Your home?" Jennifer stood up abruptly. "Your home is a sad little box in a rundown building. Meanwhile, we live in a beautiful house that you bought us, and you're going to throw us out of it because your feelings got hurt?" "Jennifer." Michael grabbed her arm, but she shook him off. "No, Michael. I'm tired of tiptoeing around this. Your mother is a manipulative, bitter old woman who can't stand to see us happy. She's been holding this house over our heads the whole time, waiting for an excuse to pull the rug out. Well, guess what, Margaret? You want to kick us out? Fine. But you'll lose your grandchildren forever. You'll die alone, and no one will come to your funeral. Is that what you want? Is your petty revenge worth that?" The room went silent. Michael had gone pale. Even Jennifer seemed to realize she'd gone too far. I stood up slowly. My voice was perfectly calm. "I think it's time for you to leave now." "Mom," Michael started, "get out of my apartment. Both of you." Jennifer grabbed her purse. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." "No," I said. "The biggest mistake of my life was believing my son would grow up to be a better man than this." Michael flinched, as if I'd slapped him. "Good." They left, Jennifer storming out first, Michael lingering for just a moment. "You're really going to do this?" he asked. "You're really going to choose pride over family?" "I'm choosing self-respect over abuse," I replied. "Close the door on your way out." After they left, I sat in my armchair for a long time, my heart racing. My hands were shaking. For a moment, doubt crept in. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should have accepted their offer. Maybe... No. I remembered Jennifer's real face, the one beneath the mask. I remembered Michael's silence that first night, his refusal to defend me even now. I remembered every screenshot, every cruel word, every dismissive gesture. Fear whispered that I might truly lose my grandchildren forever, that I might die alone, just as Jennifer had promised. But louder than the fear was something else. Resolve. Diamond hard and unbreakable. They had shown me exactly who they were, and I believed them. The court date arrived on a gray Thursday morning in January. Thomas had filed for formal eviction proceedings when Michael and Jennifer refused to vacate voluntarily. They'd hired their lawyer, a young aggressive type named Brad Sutherland, who specialized in tenant rights. According to Thomas, Sutherland had been making noises about elder abuse, undue influence, and oral contracts. I dressed carefully that morning. Not in my usual Target clearance clothes, but in the one good suit I still owned from my working days. Navy blue, well-tailored, with modest jewelry. I looked like what I was, a retired professional with 40 years of experience. Thomas met me outside the courthouse. "Ready?" he asked. "Yes." "Remember, stay calm. Let me do most of the talking. If you're asked questions, answer simply and directly. Don't let them provoke you. We entered the courtroom. It was smaller than I'd expected, wood-paneled and formal. Michael and Jennifer sat at the defendant's table with their lawyer. Jennifer wore a conservative dress and minimal makeup. Michael's face was drawn, exhausted. They didn't look at me as I took my seat. Judge Catherine Reynolds presided. She was perhaps 60, with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every excuse in the book. Brad Sutherland presented his case first. He painted a picture of a vulnerable family, young parents with small children struggling financially, who'd been promised a home by a beloved grandmother. He claimed I'd made verbal agreements to eventually gift them the property, that they'd relied on these promises in good faith. He called me vindictive, claimed I was retaliating over a minor family disagreement. Then he called Jennifer to the stand. She was good. Very good. She spoke softly, her voice trembling at all the right moments. She talked about how much she loved me, how grateful they'd been for my help, how shocked they were when the eviction notice came. She painted herself as a devoted daughter-in-law who'd simply been stressed and overwhelmed one night. "Mrs. Peterson," Sutherland asked, "did you ever promise my clients that the house would eventually be theirs?" I believed it was implied," Jennifer said. "Margaret always said she wanted to help us build a future. She wanted the girls to have stability. We thought, that meant the house would be ours someday. And the incident that allegedly triggered this eviction. Can you describe what actually happened?" "I was having a bad day. I'd just found out we might need to replace the furnace, which would cost thousands of dollars. I was stressed about money. When Margaret offered advice, I snapped. I said some things I didn't mean. I apologized immediately." "That's a lie." The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. Judge Reynolds looked at me sharply. "Mrs. Peterson, you'll have your turn." Thomas squeezed my hand under the table. "Stay calm." When it was our turn, Thomas presented the documented evidence methodically. The property deed, the LLC paperwork, the signed lease agreement. He showed that every payment Michael and Jennifer had made went into a trust for their children. I'd never taken a penny for myself. Then he presented the screenshots. Jennifer's Facebook posts, printed out in full color, the photo of me, the mocking caption, the cruel comments from her friends. I watched Jennifer's face go white. Thomas presented more. Rachel had sent him additional screenshots, private messages where Jennifer called me that senile old bat, texts where she joked about putting me in the cheapest nursing home we can find. "These aren't the words of a loving daughter-in-law," Thomas said. "These are the words of someone who viewed Mrs. Peterson as a resource to exploit and a burden to mock." Then Thomas called me to the stand. "Mrs. Peterson," he began gently, "why did you keep your financial situation private from your son?" I looked at Michael. Really looked at him. "Because I wanted him to value me for being his mother, not for what I could give him. I wanted him to be independent, to build his own life. I helped because I loved him, not because I expected gratitude, but I did expect respect. And when you purchased the house, what was your intention? To give my grandchildren a stable home in a good neighborhood. To give my son and his family security. The payments they made went into a trust fund for Emma and Sophie's education. I never wanted repayment. I wanted to help." What changed? I felt my voice strengthen. I realized that my generosity had made them entitled. They took, and not only did they not appreciate it, they actively despised me for not giving them more. Jennifer didn't just say hurtful things one time. She systematically humiliated me, privately and publicly, for years. And my son allowed it. "Did you ever promise to give them the house?" "Never. It was always my property. The lease agreement was clear." Brad Sutherland's cross-examination was aggressive. He tried to paint me as vengeful, cold, willing to hurt my grandchildren, to punish their parents. Mrs. Peterson, do you care at all about how this affects your grandchildren? I love my grandchildren more than anything in the world, I said. Which is why I set up a trust fund for their futures with the rent money their parents thought they were paying. Which is why I'm teaching them, through this difficult situation, that actions have consequences and that cruelty is not acceptable. By making them homeless? Their parents have had months to find alternative housing. I'm not making them homeless. Their parents' choices are making them homeless. Sutherland tried to rattle me, but I'd spent 40 years managing difficult clients, balancing complicated accounts, staying calm under pressure. I'd raised a child alone, buried a husband, built a life from nothing. This lawyer didn't frighten me. When Judge Reynolds asked for closing statements, Thomas kept ours simple. This is a straightforward eviction case. Mrs. Peterson owns the property. The tenants violated the lease terms through documented harassment and defamation. The law is clear. Sutherland made an emotional appeal about family and mercy. Judge Reynolds looked at the evidence for a long moment. Then she looked at Michael and Jennifer. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, she said, I've reviewed the lease agreement. I've seen the social media posts. I've heard the testimony. I want to be very clear. Your behavior toward your landlord, who also happens to be your mother and mother-in-law, has been appalling. Jennifer started to cry. Michael stared at the table. The law is on Mrs. Peterson's side. The evidence is overwhelming. Not only did you breach the lease terms, but you did so with malice and sustained cruelty. I'm granting the eviction. You have 14 days to vacate the premises. The gavel came down. Jennifer sobbed openly. Michael put his head in his hands. I felt nothing but cold, clear satisfaction. Justice. The eviction was scheduled for January 28th. A sheriff's deputy would be present to ensure Michael and Jennifer vacated the property completely. Thomas had arranged for a moving company to place any remaining belongings in storage for 30 days, after which they'd be disposed of, if not claimed. I didn't go to the house that day. I couldn't watch that. But Thomas texted me updates. 10:15 a.m. Deputy arrived. They're packing. 11:30 a.m. Jennifer arguing with deputy about timeline. He's not budging. 1:45 p.m. Moving truck loaded. They're leaving now. 2:20 p.m. Property secured. It's over. It's over. I sat in my apartment, holding my phone, and finally let myself feel the weight of what I'd done. I'd evicted my son and his family. My grandchildren were moving to a 2-bedroom apartment in a worse neighborhood. They'd have to change schools mid-year. Sophie's asthma might get worse in their new place. I'd heard Jennifer complaining about mold issues. But they'd done this to themselves. Every step of the way, they'd had chances to change course, to apologize sincerely, to show real remorse. Instead, they'd tried manipulation, guilt, legal threats, and finally, outright hostility. The consequences were earned. 3 days after the eviction, I received an email from Michael. No greeting, just a paragraph. I'll never forgive you for this. You've destroyed our family over your ego. The girls cry every night in their new apartment. Emma's teacher called because she's acting out at school. Jennifer is on antidepressants because of the stress you've caused. You got what you wanted. You hurt us. Congratulations. I hope it was worth it. You'll never meet another grandchild if we have one. You'll never be invited to another birthday, another holiday, another family event. You're alone now. That's what you chose. I read it 3 times, then filed it away with all the other documentation. More evidence of their inability to take responsibility. A week later, Rachel texted me. Thought you should know. Jennifer is telling everyone you stole their house. She's playing the victim hardcore, just FYI. I wasn't surprised. Let her tell her version. The people who mattered knew the truth. In February, I listed the house for sale. The real estate market was strong. I listed it for $425,000, and it sold within 2 weeks to a lovely young couple with a new baby. They were thrilled with the house, with the neighborhood, with the good school district. At closing, I signed the papers and received a check for $412,000 after fees and agent commissions. Combined with my existing savings, I was now worth just over $900,000. I sat in my car in the parking lot afterward, holding that check, and made a decision. I called Dorothy. "Want to take a trip?" "Where?" she asked. "Europe. 2 months. My treat." We flew to Paris in March. I stayed in Nice hotels, ate at good restaurants, bought myself new clothes that actually fit well. I saw the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, the Palace of Versailles. We took a train to the south of France, spent lazy days drinking wine and reading books in cafes. In Italy, I bought beautiful leather handbags for Emma and Sophie. Real ones, expensive ones. I shipped them to Michael's new address with a note. "For the girls. Love, Grandma." No response. I didn't expect one. When I returned to the States in May, I sold my apartment and bought a small, beautiful condo in a quiet neighborhood with a view of a park. Modern kitchen, walk-in closet, a second bedroom for guests. It was mine. Truly, completely mine. I furnished it with new things. Not expensive things necessarily, but things I chose because I liked them. A comfortable sofa, good quality sheets, art for the walls. One Saturday, I was arranging flowers in my new kitchen when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Emma and Sophie standing there with an older woman I didn't recognize. I opened the door carefully. "Mrs. Peterson?" the woman said. "I'm Caroline Brennan from Child Protective Services. These are your grandchildren, Emma and Sophie. Their parents were arrested this morning." My heart stopped. Arrested? Drug charges, methamphetamine. Apparently they'd been using for months, possibly longer. The children have been temporarily removed from the home. They mentioned you as next of kin. Emma was crying silently. Sophie clutched a stuffed rabbit. "May we come in?" Caroline asked. I stepped back and let them enter. The girls stood in my new living room, looking small and lost. "Emma, Sophie," I said softly. "Come here, sweetheart." They ran to me. I held them both, feeling their small bodies shake with sobs. "I've got you," I whispered. "I've got you now." Caroline explained the situation. Michael and Jennifer had been arrested in a sting operation. They'd apparently started using meth to cope with stress after the eviction. Their new apartment was condemned as unfit. The girls had been found alone, unfed, while their parents were out buying drugs. "We need to place them temporarily," Caroline said. "Normally we'd look for foster care, but they asked for you. Are you willing and able to take them?" I looked down at my grandchildren. Emma's eyes met mine, terrified and hopeful. "Yes," I said. "Absolutely, yes." The temporary placement became permanent. Michael and Jennifer both went to prison, 3 years minimum. In their absence, I filed for legal guardianship. No one contested it. My son had lost everything: his freedom, his children, his dignity. Not because of me, because of the choices he'd made, one after another, each worse than the last. The victory was complete. But holding my granddaughters in my new home, I realized it wasn't really about victory at all. It was about justice. And sometimes, justice is exactly as harsh as it needs to be. The first few months with Emma and Sophie were an adjustment for all of us. They'd been through trauma, watching their parents spiral into drug addiction, living in squalor, being taken away by strangers. They needed therapy, patience, and stability. I gave them all 3. I enrolled them in a good school near my new condo. Emma started 3rd grade, Sophie 1st grade. Within weeks, I saw color returning to their faces, heard laughter returning to their voices. I turned my 2nd bedroom into their room. We painted it together. They chose lavender with white clouds on the ceiling. We bought twin beds with matching quilts. Every night, I read to them before bed, just as I'd once read to Michael. Sophie's asthma improved dramatically in my clean, well-maintained condo. Emma's acting out at school stopped. Her teacher sent me an email. Emma has made remarkable progress. She's engaged, happy, and making friends. Summer arrived. Dorothy and I took the girls to the beach for a week. Watching them run through the waves, shrieking with joy, I felt pure, uncomplicated happiness. We established routines: breakfast together every morning, Friday movie nights, Saturday pancakes, Sunday library visits. Simple moments that built a foundation of safety and love. In September, I received a letter from Michael at the correctional facility. He apologized, took accountability, said he was 90 days sober and working the program. He thanked me for taking the girls and giving them what he couldn't: stability, love, a real home. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe someday. Jennifer, according to Rachel, was not doing well in prison. She'd been caught fighting, had time added to her sentence. She blamed everyone but herself and demanded Rachel make Margaret give the girls back. Rachel stopped responding to her letters. By Christmas, our life had rhythm. I'd joined a grandparent support group, reconnected with old colleagues, started volunteering at the girls' school. On Christmas morning, watching Emma and Sophie open presents in our cozy living room, I realized this was what I'd been working toward my whole life. Michael and Jennifer were in prison, their marriage destroyed, their futures uncertain. They had nothing. While I, the poor old woman, sat in my beautiful home with my grandchildren, financially secure, emotionally whole, genuinely happy. The best revenge wasn't the eviction or the court case. The best revenge was building a wonderful life without them. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. 3 years have passed now. Emma is 11, Sophie is 9. They call me Grandma, sometimes just Gran. They're thriving. Good grades, close friends, healthy and happy. Here's what I learned. Kindness without boundaries isn't kindness, it's enabling. Generosity without respect is exploitation. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices. I gave my son everything, but I never taught him accountability. That was my mistake. What would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven them? Fought back? Found a middle ground? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you teach people how to treat you. Never forget your worth.